shocking case out of Casa Grande. A woman, 7 months pregnant, shot in the head. Her boyfriend now in custody.
And tonight we're learning new details about the man in custody who told police it was an accident. Team 12's Bianca Bono is live in Casa Grande tonight. And Bianca, what have you uncovered?
Yeah, guys, well, according to newly released court documents, the victim's boyfriend, Javier Figueroa, was just recently released from the Department of Corrections after serving time for drugs and weapon charges, but he claims this shooting was an accident. Court documents revealing new information about what happened Monday night inside this Casa Grande home. Pinal County Sheriff's deputies saying Javier Figueroa claims he accidentally shot his girlfriend, who was 7 months pregnant, inside their home, then grabbed their young daughter and took off. He later returned to the scene, explaining to investigators he lives in a high-crime neighborhood, and when he got home, his front door was open. He grabbed a 9mm pistol, thinking there was an intruder inside. When he walked in, he claims he saw his pregnant girlfriend and his daughter sitting on a bed. That's when he says he pulled the trigger on the pistol to make sure it was empty before putting it away. But the gun was loaded, and he accidentally shot his girlfriend in the middle of her forehead. He then panicked and fled the scene with his daughter. Documents saying Figueroa had been drinking and was covered in blood when he later returned to his home. He's now facing aggravated assaults and weapons charges. And 12 News has learned the baby was successfully delivered 2 months premature, but family tells us the mother is still fighting for her life in the hospital. According to court documents, she has a 50-50 chance of survival. We're live in Casa Grande. Bianca Bono, 12 News.